Hello and welcome back. This video is made by Forge College. In our previous lesson, we covered interpreting contribution guidelines and preparing a contribution plan. Today, we're moving into the technical architecture of the network. We're going to look at the mechanics behind contract interactions, ordering, and the nonce. Imagine an assembly line where every step depends on the one before it. If workstation number 4 is waiting for a specific bolt that hasn't arrived, the entire line stops. The workers won't move on to the next item until that exact part is in place. Ethereum functions with this same level of strictness. It requires an unbroken sequence to update the record. If a specific transaction in a sequence is missing, the network will not process any of the tasks scheduled to come after it. To maintain this order, every account uses a nonce. Think of this as a simple sequence number assigned to every transaction you send. If your last transaction was number 10, your next one must be number 11. Before processing, they wait in a pending pool. Here is a conveyor belt with items 10 and 12, leaving a gap for 11. The network sees transaction 12, but won't move it. It sits idle until 11 arrives. This ensures that your transactions are processed in the exact order you intended, regardless of when they actually reach the network. Once a transaction is picked up from the belt, it enters the execution phase. This is where the actual work happens. Smart contracts act like automated factory workers. One robotic arm picks up a transaction and passes it to another arm for a specific task. These are internal calls, and they are synchronous. The first worker must stop and wait for the second to finish. Because these steps are linked, every internal call must succeed for the entire transaction to be considered complete. But sometimes a task fails. Imagine a worker arm runs out of power, what we call an out-of-gas error, and drops the item mid-process. This triggers a revert. The network undoes every storage change and balance transfer made during that transaction, returning the state to exactly how it was before the transaction started. However, though the work was undone, the transaction was still processed. The gas was spent and the attempt recorded. Because it happened, the non-sequence counter moves forward. The ticket is punched, unblocking the line for the next transaction. So while a failed transaction cancels its own changes, it still consumes its place in the sequence. This sets the specific starting conditions for the next transaction waiting in line. This creates a gap between the mempool, the waiting room where we hope things will happen, and the canonical chain, which is the finalized history of what actually occurred. If you send transaction 12 assuming transaction 11 will succeed, you might run into trouble. If 11 fails and reverts, the state changes 12 needed won't exist, causing 12 to fail as well. For developers, the lesson is clear. Never assume a transaction has changed the state of the blockchain just because it's sitting in the waiting room. To safely chain interactions, your system should verify the finalized state on-chain before moving forward with the next step. Understanding these sequencing rules helps us see how Ethereum manages its internal workload. In our next lesson, we'll see how these rules define the broader architectural boundaries of the network. You can find more deep dives into Ethereum transactions and state changes at forge.college. It's a great place to continue your education on Web3 topics. This video was made by Forge College. Thank you for watching. Mastering how nonces and internal call slumption allows you to accurately predict how state transitions apply to the ledger. This shared logic ensures that every node in the network reaches the same state after every transaction is processed.